What does it feel like to carry a breaking life on your shoulders while pretending everything's fine? For Lena Torres, that was every shift at Aurum, San Francisco's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. The city lights sparkled below, painting a golden glow across the skyline, a view that screamed money and power. Diners in tailored suits and shimmering dresses clinked wine glasses, their laughter mixing with the soft jazz humming through the air. Lena, dressed in her black skirt and white blouse, wove between tables with a tray of drinks. Her hands didn't shake, but inside, she was worn thin. 2 jobs, a sick mother at home, and bills that kept growing like weeds. Still, she wore her polite smile, serving without a word of complaint, because that's what kept the tips coming. The rooftop was alive tonight, packed with the city's elite. The air smelled of expensive perfume and grilled lobster, and every table gleamed with polished silverware. Lena moved quickly, balancing a tray of sparkling water and wine, her sneakers silent on the sleek wooden floor. She'd been at Aurum for months, long enough to know how to fade into the background. The guests didn't see her, not really, just a pair of hands delivering their drinks, clearing their plates. That was fine by her. She didn't need their attention, only their cash to cover her mother's medicine and the rent that was always due too soon. At the corner table, tucked near the glass railing with the best view of the bay, sat Noah Grant. He was a Millionaire CEO, known for his tech empire, Grant Technologies. His dark suit fit him like it was made for him, which it probably was, and his calm presence seemed to steady the air around him. Next to him was Isabel Crane, his girlfriend, a social media influencer whose face was all over the internet. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves and her cream-colored dress screamed money. But her eyes were sharp, like she was always looking for a fight. Lena approached their table carefully, setting down their drinks with precision. Isabel didn't look up, just waved a manicured hand. "Don't stand so close. Wait over there until I need you," she said, her voice cold enough to chill the wine. Lena nodded, stepping back, her face blank. She'd heard worse from customers like Isabel, but the words still stung, like a slap meant to remind her of her place. Lena kept moving, refilling glasses at a nearby table where a group of businessmen were arguing about stocks. One of them barely moved his plate as she reached for it, forcing her to lean awkwardly. "Careful, sweetheart," he said with a smirk, and his friends chuckled. Lena ignored it, clearing the table and heading back to the kitchen for another tray. The night was busy, the kind that made her feet ache and her mind blur. But she pushed through. She always did. Her mother's hospital bills didn't care if she was tired, and neither did the landlord. She glanced at the clock on the wall, 3 more hours until her shift ended. Then a bus ride home to her tiny apartment in a part of the city where the lights didn't shine so bright. Back at Noah's table, Isabel was holding court, her voice loud as she told a story about some celebrity party. Noah listened quietly, his eyes on his phone, like he was only half there. Lena approached to refill their water, her movements smooth from practice. She poured carefully, keeping her eyes down. Then it happened. Isabel, gesturing wildly to make a point, swung her hand and knocked the wine glass from Lena's grip. The glass tipped and red wine splashed across Isabel's dress, a dark stain blooming on the cream fabric. The room went quiet, the jazz seeming to fade as every head turned. Isabel shot to her feet, her face twisting with rage. "You clumsy idiot," she screamed, loud enough to echo off the glass walls. "This dress cost more than your whole life." Lena's heart pounded, her breath catching. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It was an accident." She grabbed a napkin from the table, offering it, but Isabel slapped it away, the motion sharp and deliberate. "Pathetic," she spat, her voice carrying across the rooftop. "You don't belong in a place like this, fumbling around like some nobody." Guests at nearby tables whispered, their eyes locked on the scene. A woman in a pearl necklace leaned to her friend, muttering something behind her hand. Lena felt their stares like needles, each one pricking deeper. Noah shifted in his seat, his voice low. "Isabel, it's just a dress. Let it go." But Isabel turned on him, her eyes blazing. "Just a dress? This is your fault for bringing me to a place that hires morons like her." The manager, a thin man named Tom with a cheap suit and a permanent sweat on his brow, hurried over, his face pale. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing between Isabel and Lena. Isabel pointed at Lena, her voice sharp as a knife. "This girl ruined my dress and I want her gone. If she's not fired right now, we're leaving, and I'll make sure everyone online knows this place is a joke." Tom's eyes widened. He looked at Lena, then back at Isabel, who was already pulling out her phone, her fingers poised to type. "Lena, you're done," he said, his voice flat, not meeting her eyes. The words hit like a punch. Lena opened her mouth to protest, but the crowd's murmurs drowned her out. Some guests smirked, others looked away, but none spoke up. A man at a nearby table whispered, "She should have been more careful," and his wife nodded. Lena's hands shook as she untied her apron, the black fabric crumpling in her fists. The weight of every stare pressed down on her, heavy and unyielding. She wanted to scream that it wasn't her fault, that Isabel had knocked the glass herself, but what was the point? No one here cared about the truth. She walked toward the exit, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. The restaurant's warmth faded as she stepped into the cold San Francisco night. Rain started to fall, light at first, then heavier, soaking her blouse and plastering her hair to her face. She clutched her apron to her chest, Isabel's words echoing in her mind. Pathetic, nobody moron. She'd worked so hard, picking up every shift she could, saving every dollar for her mother's treatments, and in one moment, it was gone. The city lights glowed around her, distant and uncaring as she walked alone, the rain mixing with the tears she couldn't hold back. Her apartment was a 40-minute bus ride away, in a neighborhood where the streets were cracked and the buildings sagged. By the time she got home, her clothes were drenched and her shoes squished with every step. Inside, the air smelled of medicine and old coffee. Her mother was asleep in the next room, her breathing uneven. Lena didn't turn on the light. She couldn't afford to waste electricity. She sank onto the couch, still holding her apron, and stared at the dark ceiling. How was she going to pay for anything now? Her second job at a diner barely covered groceries. She closed her eyes, replaying the night, wondering why some people could destroy others so easily, like it was nothing. The next morning, Lena sat at the kitchen table, a stack of unpaid bills spread out in front of her. A medical invoice glared up, the numbers bold and cruel. Her mother's cough echoed from the bedroom, each sound a reminder of why she couldn't stop. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion settling into her bones. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing on the screen. She hesitated, thinking it might be a bill collector, but answered anyway. "Hello, this is Rebecca Sloan from Grant Technologies," a warm voice said. "We reviewed your application for the junior design role. Your portfolio really stood out. Can you come in today for an interview?" Lena's breath caught. She'd sent that application months ago, a desperate shot in the dark after teaching herself design on a borrowed laptop. It felt like a cruel joke. The CEO himself was impressed, Rebecca added, her tone genuine. Lena's mind spun. Grant Technologies. Noah Grant, the man from last night who'd watched her get fired. Her pulse raced as she agreed to the interview, hanging up with a mix of hope and fear. The call was a lifeline, pulling her toward something she never expected, but the shadow of last night still clung to her, heavy and cold. Lena's sneakers still felt out of place on the polished marble floor of Grant Technologies' lobby as she stepped off the bus the next morning, her heart racing from the phone call that had turned her world upside down. Rebecca Sloan's voice had been warm but firm, offering her an interview for a junior design role based on a portfolio Lena had submitted months ago in a moment of desperate hope. She'd thrown on her only decent outfit, a simple black dress from a thrift store, paired with a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit right. Her hands clutched the worn folder of her designs, each sketch a piece of herself she'd poured out during late nights after waitressing shifts. The memory of last night at Orem clung to her like damp clothes. The spilled wine, Isabel Crane's venomous words, the manager's quick dismissal. Pathetic moron, nobody. The words stung, but the call from Grant Technologies was a spark in the dark, and Lena wasn't about to let it slip away. The lobby was a world apart from the cramped apartment she'd left behind. Glass walls stretched to the ceiling, reflecting the morning sun, and the air smelled of polished wood and expensive coffee. Men and women in sharp suits moved with purpose, their voices low and clipped as they talked about deals and deadlines. Lena felt every glance as she crossed to the reception desk, her dress too plain, her shoes too scuffed. The receptionist, a young man with a slick haircut, barely looked up as he pointed her to the 20th floor. In the elevator, Lena smoothed her dress, catching her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, but her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. Years of double shifts and worry etched into her face. She whispered to herself, "Just be you." That's enough. The doors slid open, revealing a bustling office where phones buzzed and screens glowed with data. Rebecca Sloan met her at the elevator, her smile warm but professional. She was in her 40s, with short gray hair and a navy blazer that screamed confidence. Lena, you made it. Your portfolio caught a lot of eyes around here. Let's get you settled. She led Lena to a conference room with a long glass table and floor-to-ceiling windows, showing San Francisco's skyline, the bay glinting in the distance. Two other executives were already there, a woman with a tight bun and a tablet she kept tapping, and a man with a beard who introduced himself as the creative director. Lena sat across from them, her portfolio spread out, her hands clasped to hide their trembling. The questions came fast: how she'd learned design, what inspired her work, how she'd handle tight deadlines. Lena answered honestly, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. She talked about teaching herself on a borrowed laptop, sketching ideas between shifts to keep her mind sharp. The creative director leaned forward, flipping through her designs, his eyes narrowing at her bold layouts. "This is raw but polished," he said. "You've got a real eye." The woman with the tablet was tougher, firing off questions about team dynamics and pressure. Lena drew on her waitressing experience, explaining how she'd juggled packed tables and rude customers without cracking. Rebecca nodded, jotting notes, and when the interview ended, she stood with a smile. "You did great, Lena. We want you to start as a junior designer, working directly under our CEO, Mr. Noah Grant." Lena's breath caught. Noah Grant, the man from last night who'd sat quietly as Isabel tore her apart. Her mind spun. Did he know it was her? Had he seen her name on the portfolio? She managed a shaky, "Thank you," her voice barely audible. Rebecca walked her out, explaining onboarding details, but Lena's thoughts were elsewhere. Working for Noah felt like walking a tightrope, one wrong step, and she'd fall back into the chaos of last night. The next day, Lena returned for her first official day, her nerves a tight coil in her stomach. She'd spent the night staring at her ceiling, rehearsing what she'd say if Noah recognized her. She wore the same black dress, the blazer slightly less awkward after some pinning. The office was alive with movement. Employees darted between cubicles, papers rustled, and coffee cups steamed on desks. Rebecca led her to a sleek boardroom for a team briefing, the air humming with the weight of a new marketing campaign. Lena took a seat near the back, her notebook open, trying to blend in. The room filled with a dozen staff members, some whispering about deadlines, others checking their phones. Then Noah walked in, his presence silencing the chatter. He was just as she remembered, tall, composed, his dark suit sharp against the bright room. His eyes scanned the team as he started the meeting, his voice calm but firm, laying out goals for a campaign that could make or break the company's next quarter. Lena scribbled notes, her pen moving fast to keep up with Noah's points about branding and market share. She kept her head down, hoping to stay unnoticed, but her heart pounded every time his gaze swept the room. He didn't seem to recognize her, and she wasn't sure if that was a relief or a worry. The meeting was in full swing, with a senior designer pitching logo ideas when the door swung open. Isabel Crane stepped in, her red heels clicking sharply on the floor. She carried a leather folder, her blonde hair perfect, her tailored red suit a stark contrast to the cream dress Lena had ruined. Isabel was here as a marketing consultant, hired through her agency to shape the campaign's public face. Lena's stomach twisted, her pen freezing mid-word. Isabel's eyes swept the room, confident and cold, until they landed on Lena. For a moment, her polished smile slipped, her lips parting in shock before tightening into a thin line. Lena felt the air thicken, the memory of last night's humiliation flashing through her mind, Isabel's voice, the crowd's stares, the rain soaking her as she walked away. But she didn't flinch. She met Isabel's gaze, her face calm, and said, "Good morning, Ms. Crane. I'll be overseeing your work on this campaign." Her voice was steady, each word a quiet reclaiming of power. Isabel's fingers tightened on her folder, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't respond. The room noticed the tension, heads turning slightly, whispers starting. Noah glanced over, his expression neutral, but his eyes lingered on Lena for a beat longer than necessary. He didn't speak, instead moving the meeting forward, calling on the senior designer to continue. Lena took a deep breath and presented her first set of design concepts, standing at the projector with her slides. Her voice was clear, her ideas sharp, clean layouts that tied the campaign's message to the company's sleek image. The team leaned in, some nodding, others asking questions she answered with ease. She'd spent years honing her instincts, and now they shone through, even in this room of strangers. Isabel sat stiffly, her arms crossed, her face a mask of forced composure. When it was her turn to present, she stood, her voice sharp but unsteady, pitching vague ideas about social media buzz that felt recycled from her online persona. Lena noticed the creative director exchange a glance with Rebecca, their expressions unimpressed. Isabel's usual charm was faltering, and Lena could feel the shift in the room's energy. As the meeting wrapped up, Noah approached Lena, his voice low but warm. "Strong start, Ms. Torres. Your design set a high bar for this campaign." She nodded, her throat tight, unsure if he remembered her from Aurum. His tone was professional, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, like he was piecing something together. Isabel lingered near the door, her eyes burning as she watched Noah speak to Lena. The other employees filed out, but the tension between the two women hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Lena gathered her notes, her hands steady but her mind racing. She'd walked into this building expecting nothing but a chance to prove herself. Now she was standing on the edge of something bigger, a chance to rewrite the story that had broken her just one night ago. Days turned into weeks, and Lena settled into her role as a junior designer. She arrived early each morning, her black dress swapped for a modest blazer and slacks she'd scraped together enough money to buy. The office was a whirlwind of deadlines and meetings, but Lena thrived in it. Her designs, clean, bold, and intuitive, caught the attention of the senior team. She worked late, tweaking layouts and brainstorming ideas, her creativity spilling out after years of being buried under waitressing shifts. Colleagues began to seek her input, her quiet confidence earning their respect. The creative director, the bearded man from her interview, started calling her the one to watch, his gruff praise making her cheeks warm. Even Rebecca Sloan, always professional, pulled her aside one day to say, "You're proving we made the right call, Lena." Isabel, meanwhile, struggled to keep up. As the marketing consultant, she was supposed to lead the campaign's public strategy, but her ideas were shallow, rehashed social media trends that fell flat in the boardroom. She arrived late to meetings, her red heels clicking as if to demand attention, and snapped at staff when her suggestions were questioned. Lena watched her closely, not out of spite but caution, knowing Isabel's sharp tongue could strike at any moment. During one team session, Isabel tried to undermine Lena's work, interrupting her presentation to say, "Those colors are too safe. We need something flashier for the brand." Lena paused, her voice calm but firm. "The data shows our audience prefers clean aesthetics. Flashy risks alienating them." The room went quiet, and the creative director nodded, backing Lena. Isabel's face tightened, her eyes flashing with the same venom from that night at Aurum. But she said nothing. Noah noticed the difference between them. He was in most meetings, his presence steady but watchful, and Lena felt his eyes on her more often now. He'd ask her questions directly, his tone professional but warm, testing her ideas and nodding when she held her ground. One afternoon he stopped by her desk, a small cubicle tucked near a window. "Your latest mock-up is sharp," he said, leaning against the partition. "It's bold without being loud." "How'd you come up with it?" Lena hesitated, her pen pausing over her notebook. "I thought about what the customer actually needs, not just what looks good online," she said, her voice steady. Noah smiled, a small but genuine curve of his lips. "That's rare. Keep it up." As he walked away, Lena's heart raced, not just from the praise, but from the realization that he was starting to see her as more than a name on a portfolio. Isabel's frustration grew as Lena's star rose. She started pushing back harder, her comments laced with barely veiled jabs. During a brainstorming session, she cut Lena off mid-sentence, saying, "Maybe leave the big ideas to people with actual experience." The room tensed, but Lena didn't flinch. "Experience comes from doing the work, Ms. Crane," she said, her eyes locked on Isabel's. "I'm happy to share the data behind my approach if you'd like." The creative director stifled a chuckle, and Isabel's face flushed, her comeback dying in her throat. Noah, sitting at the head of the table, watched the exchange without a word, but his expression shifted, less patient with Isabel, more curious about Lena. The breaking point came during a high-stakes pitch meeting with a major client, a tech firm looking to partner with Grant Technologies on a $10 million campaign. Lena had spent weeks perfecting her designs, working late to ensure every detail was flawless. The boardroom was packed. Executives, the client's team, Noah and Isabel, who'd been tasked with presenting the social media strategy. Lena went first, her slides crisp on the projector, her voice steady as she walked through her vision for the campaign's branding. The client's lead, a woman in a sharp gray suit, nodded, asking smart questions that Lena answered with ease. The room was with her, the energy electric. Then Isabel stood to present. Her slides were flashy but thin, leaning heavily on buzzwords and vague promises of viral impact. Halfway through, she veered off script, pointing to Lena's designs on the screen. "These are unoriginal," she said, her voice sharp. "I've seen similar layouts on every startup's website. We need something fresh, not this recycled stuff." The accusation hung in the air, the client's team exchanging glances. Lena's heart pounded, but she kept her face calm, her hands folded in her lap. She knew her work was original. She'd built it from scratch, drawing on years of observing what worked and what didn't. Before she could respond, Noah's voice cut through the silence, low but firm. "Ms. Crane, Lena's vision just secured us the client's early approval. Her designs are grounded in data and user behavior, not trends. If you can't respect the team's work, you can't be part of it." The room went still. Isabel's face paled, her hands gripping her notes. The client's lead raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed with the outburst. Lena sat steady, her pulse racing but her expression unchanged. Noah's words weren't just a defense, they were a line drawn in the sand. Isabel tried to recover, stammering through the rest of her pitch, but the damage was done. The client's team thanked Lena for her clarity, barely acknowledging Isabel. As the meeting ended, Isabel stormed out, her heels echoing down the hall. Lena stayed behind, organizing her notes, feeling the weight of what had just happened. She'd stood her ground without saying a word, and Noah had seen it. That evening, Lena found herself on the office's rooftop terrace, a quiet space with a view of the city lights. She'd come up to clear her head, the cool air a relief after the day's intensity. The skyline glittered, so different from the view at Orem, yet it reminded her of that night. The rain, the shame, the walk home. Now she stood taller, her hands steady as she leaned against the railing. Footsteps broke her thoughts, and she turned to see Noah approaching, his tie loosened, his expression softer than in the boardroom. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She nodded, unsure what to say. He stood beside her, looking out at the city. "You handled today well," he said. "Not just the designs, but everything. You've got something real, Lena. Integrity. I don't see that enough." She swallowed, her throat tight. "Thank you. I just want to do good work." He turned to her, his eyes searching. "I saw what happened at Orem. I didn't know who you were then, but I do now." "You didn't deserve that." Lena's breath caught, the memory of that night flooding back. She nodded, unable to find words. Noah continued, "You're changing things here. Keep going." He walked away, leaving her with the city lights and a warmth she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, news broke online. Grant Technologies' new creative head, Lena Torres. The headline spread fast, shared across industry blogs and social media. Lena stared at her phone in her tiny apartment, the words unreal. She'd gone from junior designer to leading the creative team in weeks, her work on the campaign sealing her rise. Lena's name was everywhere, a story of grit and talent that outshone Isabel's fleeting glamour. Lena stood on the rooftop terrace again that evening, the city lights brighter than ever. She wasn't the waitress in the rain anymore. She was Lena Torres, creative head, a woman who'd turned humiliation into triumph. Her mother's cough was softer now, thanks to new treatments Lena could afford. The bills were still there, but they didn't feel like a noose. As she looked out at the skyline, she felt a quiet peace, not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever been underestimated. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was a spark for anyone who'd been knocked down and kept going. The city kept shining, and so did she.